Having spent the last year or so under the moniker The Decrepit Gamer for a YouTube channel whose entire premise is that I'm doing something for which I might ordinarily be considered past my prime, I felt compelled after the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight to speak to that. Not that I feel qualified to in any way. It's just the idea of a fighter who is obviously past his prime. I mean, I think objectively past his prime. Engaging in something like that for reasons that I'm not privy to and might not understand if I were. But at any rate, I did feel compelled to offer up some thoughts to my viewers on that event. But as you'll hear me say here in just a minute, when I sat down to write a script to put my thoughts together, I just didn't really have any, other than I just felt very bad for the guy. But during a recent live stream, I just compulsively started talking about it in a stream of consciousness kind of way. I guess I just did realize that I had some thoughts about it, and I let them out. And so I can't think of a better way to make a video about my thoughts on that event other than to just replay a very small portion of that live stream. Videos on demand of past live streams aren't very popular, and that video certainly was not about that. But that small section of it was, and so I'm going to take that and play it for you here, and that's my video, and that's my thoughts on the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. Anyway, so we're about to start, guys. One thing that I want to talk about here for just a second, if you don't mind, as the Decrepit Gamer, you know, that's the whole thing about my channel is, you know, I'm a middle-aged guy, you know, I'm getting on up there in years, but I'm still at it, man. But as the Decrepit Gamer, I kind of felt compelled to talk about that Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight. I started to make a video about it. But as I sat down to write a script to make a video about that fight, about my commentary and my thoughts on that fight, I couldn't do it because all I could really come up with, guys, honestly, is I've just got nothing to fucking say, you know, really. But I have done some soul searching and a lot of thinking about that, and here's my thoughts, and I'm going to give them to you now. And there's not a lot. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it, but for what it's worth, here they are. I never liked Mike Tyson. You know, at my age, I grew up watching him fight, and I did a little competitive fighting myself as a young man. I know, probably hard to believe now, but you know, my old fat ass. But I did do a little competitive fighting when I was younger, and it was drilled into me, both in my training and in my upbringing as a young man, to put a lot of priority on sportsmanship. I loathe bad sportsmanship. I hate it. It's one of the things I hate about competitive gaming, like video gaming, is, you know, there's just so much fucking bad sportsmanship out there because people grew up in this anonymous kind of society where they're, you know, they're not face to face with the people that they compete with. And so for that reason, I think maybe largely for that reason, they don't tend to give those people a lot of respect. But I never felt like Mike Tyson. I mean, he was objectively a terrible sport. He was disrespectful to people, and he was just really kind of an asshole. But through that, for that reason, I never liked him as, you know, as a person, and by virtue of that, as a fighter. You know, through all of that, you got to give credit where it is due, and he is objectively one of the greatest fighters that's ever, you know, lived, that's certainly ever participated in that sport. One of the very greatest fighters in the world, in history. And even though I didn't like him as a competitor and as a person, I had tremendous respect for his abilities, for his skills, for his power, for his ability to fight. And I just felt like, I don't know what their reasoning was there, guys. I really don't. I don't know what, certainly there were a lot of things that happened behind the scenes that made that event come to pass that we as the public are not privy to, and probably will never be privy to. So certainly there were some deals that were made and some contracts that were signed and some, things that happened. I don't know why and how that came about. So my hope is that both of those guys got whatever it is that they wanted out of that event. If Mike Tyson just did it for the money, I hope that it was worth it to him, because to me, it was an absolute travesty. He's too old for that. He was too old for that. And it was obvious from the time he walked out there. I mean, he's got, I'm 3 years younger than Mike Tyson. And it kills me to stand here and play these goddamn virtual reality games. I could only imagine. Now, I know he trained and all of that, but it doesn't matter how much training. You just, you get past your prime and you just cannot perform to the standard that you could when you were a young man. And you get too far past your prime and you just can't perform in that kind of, he had no business out there, guys. And it was a shame, because before that fight, I spent so much time telling my son about what a great fighter he was. I also told my son I didn't like him too much as a competitor, but what a tremendous fighter he was, and how if he could get out there and get that one punch in, he was going to absolutely destroy that kid. I don't know if they were contracted, against him doing that or what, but he hardly threw any punches, and it tired him. And I watched it, and all I could say, between rounds, when it was showing him sitting there in his corner, and he was just so exhausted from just throwing so few punches, and I just felt bad for him, man. I really felt bad for him, because it was a travesty, because here was one of the greatest fighters that ever lived, and you're just, it was just time for him to retire and relish in his legend. And they brought him out, and I think they just created an event that is, should have been embarrassing to him, and it was just a travesty. So I hope he got what he wanted out of it. And Jake Paul, I don't know that kid. All I know about him is that he's a very popular YouTuber, and I know from the couple of videos of his that I've seen that he makes exactly the kind of content that I have no interest in watching. So I don't know him, but I hope that he got whatever he wanted out of it, and I hope that Mike Tyson did too. And I just feel that the whole thing was a travesty, and honestly, probably shouldn't have happened. That's my thoughts. Anyway, I felt compelled to talk about that. I was going to make a video specifically about it. I had a hard time piecing my thoughts together. I probably should have just not even tried to write a script. I probably should have just started the camera rolling and started talking like I did just now. Because as I started talking, it turned out I guess I did have quite a few thoughts on it. All right. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of all that seriousness. We're finna do a fucking dungeon crawl here.